Hey folks, Nick Tockert here with the Historical Fencing Guild. One moment, please. Let me just squiggle on in. And here we go. Cool. Before we get going on the glory that is the Historical Fencing Guild, we have to talk about the folks who keep our lights on. So first and foremost, we're made possible by sales of the Simple Sword, the Fighting Axe, and the Simple Spear, which I need to tweak my banner about. They're all available through Amazon at the link listed here. All the links are in the description. We're also made possible by my amazing Patreon folks over at patreon.com/the Historical Fencing Guild. Those include, but are not limited to, Frog G, Off in the Woods. Let's see, I want to do it by memory, and I'm going to try. Frog G, Off in the Woods, Brian K. Morris, Cindy Kep. I'm missing one. Off in the Woods, Ronald Rain, Lee Kai G, and Steve Augusto. I knew I had a name floating around. These wonderful folks are who will let me keep the lights on, and I couldn't do it without you. I'm sorry if I'm a little late. I've been dealing with some technical difficulties and necessary socializing. So, last week we had a great... let me see what's going on the chat real quick. And Foxy says, here we go. Whee! It's showtime. So we've joined by Foxy, Cindy, and Thesis. Historical Fencing Guild is brought to you by The Simple Sword, and that's the link where you can find them and my other channels. And that's this YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Gremlins. Now, I will warn you that right now we are having wind and unstable conditions, which earlier in the day interfered with my previous broadcast, and it may indeed interfere with this one. So I'm giving heads up on that. And if you'd like some tea, go to the Tea House, Bladed Thesis' YouTube channel. But what we're going to do this time, because there was some talk of really liking the format that was going on last time. Let me do that, and we'll go here, and we'll go here. All righty. I'll put this away. Last time we were talking about tactics and strategies, and people really kind of enjoyed that. So let's get a tool I reasonably like. Do I want just a straight marker? Let's see how that's working. That size. Okay, I got big, fat, straight marker. And yes, you can see more of my art at deviantart.com/NickT. And you can find go to the patreon.com for the Historical Fencing Guild, where you can get new stuff. Great things are coming. Now, I also want to remind folks that April 14th, I will be at, let me double check the date. April 13th, yes. Saturday, April 13th, I will be at RegionCon in Cherville, Indiana, where you're more than welcome to come out, meet me, buy my books in person, get custom art done live, and we can talk about basically anything on your mind. But last week we talked a good bit about basically engagement. And that would be your circles. Quick reminder, this is you. This is how far you can reach with your hand. This is how far you can reach with your sword. Pardon the circles the circles being a little shaky. I'm having some hand difficulties today, but we can figure it out. And this is how far you can reach with a comfortable step. We talked about that, and I'm going to make my eraser huge so I can make my life a little bit easier. But we also talked about very rudimentary line combat. And we started to talk about scenarios and what we can use as training techniques to elevate our position in there. Right? Let me pull this down just a bit because it doesn't quite feel comfortable yet. Yeah, that's good. Now, we're going to make this big for you guys. Gotta hide this. You guys can't see some of the junk that's on my screen right now. But we're going to do that. There we go. Now, we have scenarios. Why should you train in scenarios? Why shouldn't you just go out and fight with your opponents? Well, first, scenarios are going to do some things better than any other thing I've found. They can focus on concepts. So when you have a scenario, you are looking at victory conditions other than simply beating your opponent. Because most things, you're either 1v1 or many v many. These are the two ways that most of your fights are going to go. Okay? In most games. As soon as you add more complex things to both your training and your actual sparring type sessions, you get more opportunities for flexible thinking. So what that means is you get things like, and we'll look at, actually, I got one of them here. I have towards the back of the book, as I recall. It's been a while since I've cracked this bad boy open, but I believe I get into this. We talk about melee group tactics. Aha. Oh, wow. Okay. That should be. I'm going to be doing a new edition of this book fairly soon because I've got some tweaking. But when we are doing, this is the standard balanced force, okay? This is interesting, but it doesn't necessarily teach you. What you want is 1v many, where you have the case of usually 2 to 4 opponents. And that's a lot, but it forces you to learn how to use other people's mobility against them, how to tangle up groups. This is a very good thing to train in. One variant we can talk about, and I don't know if this is actually in my book, but we'll see. Fox and hounds. Fox and hounds, and you can use this in any fighting style roughly. You can use this in any, any in the round set of conventions. So you can't do this in strip fencing. But if you can move around in a circle on your field, you can do fox and hounds. One fighter is the fox. Is fox. Two swords. Two fighters or more are hounds. Single. Now, this exercise will teach people how to. Hey, Alec. Glad you're dropping the like, friend. Missed you this morning, but I'm glad you're doing your homework. Keep it up. Okay. Two fighters are hounds. They each have a single sword. This gives a weapon equality, but not a a numbers or action economy. So this is going to allow you to have these two people learning to work in cohesion against this person. Meanwhile, this person here has to learn how to tangle them up enough to hopefully pick off one and get the other. Hello, Kitty. This is a really basic exercise that helps get the idea of movement. It can be very exciting, very straining on all members involved. It's also a great way for younger, less experienced fighters to fight with somebody who is more experienced. Okay? Because the number advantage is literally what's fighting the experience. And this is one of my favorite things to do when I have eager newish fighters. Teach them the rules, get them going, get them comfortable, and when they get past the line where I consider them safe to fight, having two newbies against a medium to experienced individual will teach everybody a lot concisely. It's a good exercise. And this is still a standard, just whoever's still alive at the end of the game wins. There are no respawns in this. We keep it simple. This is one I'd like people to do. Now, another great one, and I wish Elena were here because she could talk about it, but she is in a room that is green, and I lament that, is two-headed giant. Two-headed giant, as I run it, is an interesting game because what it does is each team is two fighters. I'm using fighters as a generic term. Fencers, swordsmen, swordswomen, what a Jedi. I don't care. I'm using fighter because it's general. Two fighters. One has a sword. One has this is each team, shield. Both share a life. This forces people to be able to fight close. You're talking about the bull ring. We've done that sort of thing. One stands in the center, all opponents. Yes, that's a given. That's 1v all. We could get into that. That leads to some more advanced things, but we've definitely played that by other names. Doing this teaches people to think in terms of defending their partners while they are in melee and looking after your partners. This makes for a stronger line. People learn to move and work together better. It is one of the great simple exercises you can do. Now, what Thesis was talking, what he calls bull ring, right? Or bullfight, yeah, bull ring. And that's 1v many. This is sort of like a kumite. It is a rite of passage in some schools. It is actually fairly common as a training technique. And it teaches people not to be in a kung fu movie. If you are attacking, it should be Harriers here, and you're trying to flank the rear. You want to spread out and come in simultaneous or only slightly staggered at the one opponent. One person, and this is where you get the skills for it in Two-Headed Giant. One person is only focused on tangling them up. They're not looking to fight. They're not looking to get the kill. Their whole goal in life is to tangle up the weapon or weapons of the target. Excuse me. Now, that's okay, but what I prefer, we have a version of this. And that, my dear friends, and it's like I said, it's a shame that Trelena is not here to catch this, but that is a Valhalla Circle of Death. This, my friends, is the granddaddy of all the training scenarios when it comes to finding out who that day is currently the best. It starts as a free for all, right? Person gets killed. They leave, right? But here's the thing. But anyone they killed respawns. What that means is, let's say, we'll go Thesis, Foxy, Kitty, and Cindy, okay, are all sparring. And let's say, just for Cindy kills Kitty. So Kitty goes out. So you got Kitty over here watching the fight. Then Cindy kills Foxy. Right? Then Thesis kills Cindy. If Thesis kills Cindy, Kitty and Foxy both come back. So the only way that you can the only way that you can win this is by systematically defeating every single other opponent involved, which when you have a group of 4 is not bad, but when you're doing Valhallas with groups of 12 or 20, now you get into you're going to be doing this all day. You're going to be exhausted. Stamina starts to factor in at nearly as much as skill. And it's a very good training manual. You say Bullring taught you to protect yourself from all angles while simultaneously forcing the opponents to work together. I can't tell you how many times people got their weapons. Yes, it's a very basic system. Yep, and it will cure you of tunnel vision. It will cure you of not keeping keeping aware of your environment. If you do enough games like that, you start to get almost precognitive, if you weren't already. Give me just a second. Get that squared away. So yeah, it's a good that all against one is a classic training technique, but you need to have stair steps between it and beyond, which is why something like Valhalla Circle of Death keeps things interested. Now, there are other methods that you can do that are smaller but important. So if you have somebody like me who can, if overly defensive or overly offensive, if you are imbalanced, so if your whole fighting style is go, 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 or back up, back up, back up, back up, one of okay. Echo game is fun too. You teach to listen to the sounds around you. One person in the center is blindfolded. The opponent will walk around, tap things in the environment. The person in the center then has to attack the thing that was tapped. Okay, so you have targets that are valid hits. We just had to teach each other to fight blindfolded because I was training actually physically blind students. So we had to develop a system with 2 sounding bells for them, and the other fact is training to fight blindfolded in general. So yes, it's a great system, but this is more a training game, and this is the hot box. The hot box is roughly, depending on how generous somebody is, we'll say 5 by 5 square in the list field that person cannot leave. They can't back out. We can't exactly do echo game over Discord. Oh, that's funny. But they have to deal with one or more people whilst not being able to move. This forces people to rely on their parries and their awareness. And for a fixed amount of time, usually 30 seconds, 1 minute, and then you just stretch it out, these people try to get the person in the box. The person in the box tries to survive. Their first goal is to survive. This works really well on keeping physically defensive people more active, more rooted. So the ones who back away more rooted. And the ones who are more aggressive, they have to stay passive to build up their defenses. Because a lot of people will, when you look at fighting types, and we're not talking styles like he's fighting capoeira or capoeira. No. I'm not talking different martial arts. I'm talking different attitudes. You need to be able to handle, if you're aggressive, situations where you're forced to be defensive. You need to be able to handle situations where you're forced to be offensive. And that can be challenging. Drills like this can help. And again, this is another variant that is very good for teaching, for allowing a more skilled opponent to spar with a less skilled opponent and have opportunities for both of them to learn simultaneously. This is very good for educational drills, and we need to look in the term of educating so that it is fun. It's not just pairing up to fight. Okay, everybody, you fight you, you fight you. It's not just a roving bracket. So this is a great great game. So this is a hot, I didn't write it up there, so I'm going to go hot box. There is a variant, because of course there's a variant. That's a little too big for what I need to do. 1 second. Where am I? Okay, I'm over there. So give me about 150. Okay, and we'll put that back. And I'm sorry if my writing is just a little blurry today. This is where normally when you are doing drills, you want to be just outside of each other's reach. But the nice version of this is the double hotbox. You both are within striking range of the shortest person. You both have the boxes on the ground to route yourself to one place. Now, the reason we have this set up is so that both of you have to stay there and kind of brawl it out. This is going to build the ability to deal with aggressive attacks and aggressive defenses. Finding your rhythm in the flow. And it forces you not to, by taking away the footwork, or minimalizing it, you're not caught in thinking about that. Your only thoughts are keeping their blade off you while you respond, or their hand off you while you respond. Standard kills. This is very close to what Cindy's Tai Chi Sumo. Because there are variants of this where your goal is to try to aggress your opponent to step out of the box. And I can see where you were forcing Echo Game forced the tactical awareness, because you usually played Echo Game as Small Grove of Trees. Now, I'm giving you guys, and I know I'm going through these quick because I have a lot of them. And I really want you guys to have some of these as options, okay? Now, when you are, and I remembered what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about more advanced line combat. I might do that later, but we'll see. The granddaddy of all our tactics games, of course, was Warball. And Warball used some very specific equipment. We had the wireframe. So you go down to the pet store, okay? And there, it looks like a soccer ball, but it's just the lines. So it's hollow. You can squish it. It's made of basically indestructible rubberized material. And it's about the size of a soccer ball. It looks like a soccer ball, but just the wireframe of the lines between tiles. I think you guys can understand that. Well, equally spaced from it are two hula hoops on the ground. Now, teams of 4 and up usually, but we'll say between 2 and 10, because after that it can get a bit unruly. Split up, Warball's in the center, and your goal is to either be holding it when you step in the hoop, or to throw and have it stay in the hoop. And the hoop is set on the ground. What this does is it incorporated remember how we talked about defense drills? It's just, this is where all your football strategies start to come out. Passing, but remember, you can also use your weapons. So you can basically lacrosse that ball around. You can kick it, you can throw it, you can carry it, whatever it takes to get it to the hoop. Now, each round is timed. Each death resets at the end of each round. There are 3 rounds. This was fun. Yes, don't step on the hula hoop. And there were some flaws. I did have to explain to one gentleman that there is no tackling. We had to maintain all our usual fighter safety things with the addition of chucking this ball around. I had one gentleman whose approach to war ball was literally to pick up the person on the other team who had the ball, squeeze them to their chest, run and flying tackle the other hula hoop. Being the said person was picked up and squashed, it's not very pleasant. And I suspect there was some side meanings for it. But analyzing, this is what you do to test the things you've been teaching. Now, there are other teaching methods I was notorious for doing because there were some other rules that, again, for the advanced students, and what by advanced students, what I consider instructors. Once you've gotten to the point where you can teach the basics, you've got to play the dagger game. Now, the dagger game is a special game. The dagger game happens during the practice. Everyone we have a bunch of these little rubber daggers. Okay? They're small. They look something like this. Pardon my hands are shaking, so they're not doing what they should be. They say USA right here. They're very common in what we do. Sorry, I lost my black for a second. It happens. They're black. They say USA. They're only a couple bucks. They have lines in the grip and a line here, but they're all solid rubber wibbly knives. For the dagger game, the goal is to get behind and assassinate your fellow fighters. At any point during the practice, only fighters who are armed, and only with these. It has to be done safely. What this does is teach paranoia to your students. This teaches folks to be constantly aware of what's going on behind them. Because just because you are not fighting does not mean a dangerous situation. Not a fan. Some people would get my elbow in their face. And see, that's the trick. This is a voluntary thing, and that's the thing. You are already trained, Cindy, to react when somebody's behind you. But the benefit of something like this is playing it teaches you to react safely. So believe it or not, this is the kind of thing that sometimes I have to use with people who are coming from a military background to ratchet down that very response. Because just like you want to be able to be constantly aware of what's going on, you want to be able to constantly be aware of what is an actual threat and what isn't a threat. So it forces you to face the possibility of somebody coming up behind you and analyze why they're behind you. It literally it's done wonders with some of the guys I know who have had PTSD because it lets them stair-step hypervigilance back down to vigilance. And for the people that it's hard to get behind, I've done don't shoot drills. It's an automatic reaction. I don't want to be trained the way I was. Not recommended, 0 stars. I understand that. And there with every case it is different. That's why we always talk about things. This is why consent, guys. This brought up a great point. Great point. Okay? So I'm going to write this out in big letters so that everybody watching gets this. Consent is king. For every drill, for every scenario, for every thing we do whilst doing martial arts, it's talked about, it's discussed. If somebody does not want to participate in it, they're never looked down upon. Okay? Because it has to be consensual and it has to be discussed. It has to be understood by all parties. Now, I have met people who will do things like this as part of their trainings to, regardless. That is problematic. So that's why we talk about these kinds of things. And if you are ever in a situation where you are being trained by somebody, either formally as in a dojo or an established setting, or informally, much closer to what I do. And that's only because I don't charge. And some other things. Do I count it informal? If somebody's doing something in their training or in the fighting style that is not comfortable, that it is a technique or a situation you don't like, that's when you need to be able to say, I don't want to participate in that. I'm not comfortable with it. And that's an important piece of the conversation that I don't see anyone else discussing. And see, that's Kitty says, I've gotten kicked by coming up behind students to correct their form in dance class. That's the other thing. If you can handle doing this sort of drill and participating in it, it does make people more aware consciously. Being consciously aware someone is behind you doing something is better than being unconsciously aware, because that's how you get, for some of the people I've worked with, they don't have a stair step down from their deadly response. So they have to learn to be aware of trauma reactions. And trust me, like I said, I tell people, don't prank me. Never prank me. Never do jump scares on me. Because this is something I've had to do for myself to go through a system to ratchet down the extreme level of hypervigilance that I had developed. And there was a day where it almost went very wrong because one of my students, a gentleman by the name of Bob, who I love dearly, had gotten in the side door of my dark garage. And it was unlocked. It was during practice night. Somebody had turned off the light. I knew the door was unlocked. But he snuck around, and before I had practice fully set up, and I didn't know he was on site, and he jumped out of the dark at me, and I nearly stabbed him in the gut. Now, I caught myself, mainly because I didn't want to stab him through a screen door. But it was a knee-jerk reaction. That, right or wrong, was something I needed to control. My reaction controlled me, not the other way around. So that's something that is part of the awareness in what we do. Because I've had, I do this because in a melee, somebody can come behind you. And they may be a friend, they may be a foe. But if you spin around and gack them, you won't have the calibration to deal with things safely. That is a mental calibration exercise. And it is, like I said, you'll notice I said this is only with people I've had for a very long time. People I trust to instruct the basics of what we do to others. So what I can do is I can say, let me, I'll do the initial, we'll see how they're doing. And then that way I can figure out their personality, who they could train best with, if there are any special cases, and say, you'd work great with Trey. You'd work great with Amanda. You'd work great with Jason back in the day. I had other people I could say, okay, your fighting style and stuff balances there. And I could palm them off. So while the students are learning to be students, the instructors are learning to be sword masters. So I'm not just teaching them the techniques and the advanced stuff, kind of like what we're talking about tonight. I'm talking about how to control yourself, because there are kinds of calibration, and I'm using the word calibration a lot. Where did I put my marker? Here we go. Calibration. Oops. Calibration. How hard you hit. That's the simplest definition of calibration. And the trick is, well, we'll get into that, because usually a teenage class, 50-50 male and female. And I understand that. We're going to talk about that. But you have to have calibration of, this is what I call physical. How you respond. That is emotional / mental. Okay? Emotional. What this deals with is, we've had people who you have to learn how to deal with the fear of being hit, the fear of hitting your friends, the mental challenges of actually learning a weapon-based training. And this also cuts into the how you respond physically. And the reason I do this, the reason why this is so important, is this. And I'm going to bring myself up because I need to talk about this for a minute. When you are learning a martial art, in the middle it says martial arts are inherently dangerous. Martial arts, yeah. There's some truth to that misspeech, but let me see. I had to turn the camera for a guest. So there we go. Now, we have to train not just to acquire the reflexes, because when you are sparring, and I'm sure anybody who's been in it understands, there's a level of no thought. Sword comes in, hand goes out. You do not think, oh, they are throwing a sword, I need to parry out and go. No, you train your body to respond almost autonomously. And the better you get at it, the faster your response, the more effective in the short term it can be. But the problem is, as you develop these skills, you have the obligation to develop them and practice them with enough control that if you are startled in a public setting, you are not going to reflexively respond with sudden overwhelming force to every threat. Because without the the calibration of that, the control, it could be very easy to accidentally hurt, maim, or kill somebody using any number of martial arts techniques. And yes, people should not sneak up on other people. People should not mess around. I am a devout follower of Saint Fafo. He who effeth around shall findeth out. But carrying those groups, carrying those responses is it comes with the responsibility to do it safely. So to run a parallel, if you are going to concealed carry or open carry a firearm, it is expected that you understand the basic rules of firearm safety, and you apply judicious marksmanship. So you know when. This is why very early I harp on situational awareness. Know who's behind you and why. Know what's going on. Because I am the drill with the daggers is not about training the person who's doing the stabbing. Not heavily. I mean, it does teach people to be sneakier and be aware of reading the body language and keep track of where people's vision lines of sight are, things like that. Very useful for the field, but that's not the primary. The primary is teaching the reactions of the potential stabbee, teaching them how to keep track of people and predict their most likely movements. And then process. Because if somebody slips up and gets stabbed with a rubber dagger, there is very little negative consequence if they get stabbed too hard. Because those kinds of daggers, and that's why I only use it, they're one notch from what I used to call the wibbly knife. And I will try to find where they are. But wibble, wibble, wibble. Very. Because the goal is to become vigilant. Now, like all virtues, its absence or excess is a vice. What do I mean by that? I'm getting awful philosophical. If you do not have enough vigilance, you are oblivious. You don't see a threat coming. And that obviously leaves you in a horrible position. If you are hyper vigilant, which is a very common trauma response, PTSD response, several other things. Hypervigilance. One, it will cause you to overreact consistently. It will cause you to scare and offend people you care about consistently. It can and has caused reflexive injury to others. So you want to learn to be aware. And I see situational awareness as passive vigilance. It's something that just gets turned on as soon as you're out. Vigilance happens in its active sense as soon as that twinge of something doesn't feel right. From my experience, if you develop situational awareness, you will start, and it really does start to look like a sixth sense. It looks like you're psychic. You'll start to get vibes about the area. You'll around you at all times because you've trained yourself to be aware. The problem is hypervigilance tends to make you jump at shadows. It tends to keep you hopping. And what you end up doing over time is either dramatically over responding or, at almost equally bad, burning out from the input. If you don't know where to put that kind of processing of knowing where everything is going around you, extreme speed, the anxiety can do long-lasting health problems. And worse, it can actually tire you out, and you're getting so much data that you miss something. Because it ends up being like the boy who cried wolf for physical, your own internal stimuli. And you're so used to going, no, no, no. You may actually reflexively detect a threat and then claim it isn't. So this is on the other end of the spectrum. And see, that's wonderful. That means you're where you need to be. And a case, especially with a case like you need to find what you need to maintain that equilibrium. The problem, you have to understand, exactly, overload still happens. It happens to all of us. Now, when I talk about things like hypervigilance, I grew up in a household where my father has. It is much better than it used to be, but probably what would be called complex PTSD right now. The terms switch around a lot, but he's a Vietnam veteran, and he saw combat frequently and routinely and horrifically. I grew up in a household where that was normal, and as part of my growing up, I learned that was my normal. So I learned to be that vigilant. And then when I started having my own traumas of a very different nature, but no less immersed in violence, I had the foundation to become extremely hyper vigilant to the point where I could autonomously react to stimuli before my conscious had tracked it. And that is part of why I took up fencing, to learn to control myself. Okay. I came at it from a perspective both of someone who has been very, very weak and someone who has at points learned to respond dramatically for health and survival. And that's the thing. We want confidence, and competence is about finding the balance. And ironically, many of my students, because you have to understand, I do not usually have standard quote unquote students. People usually come to me from a couple backgrounds. Many of them are sexual assault and suicide survivors. Some of them are PTSD veterans who want something active that they can use, like I was describing, to step down, to bring it all to, oh God, there's a term, not drifting towards the mean. Oh. But things tend to rattle out to a middle ground. And what I try to do is have a system and approach for both these sets of people who can learn to harness the benefits of their situation and gain the benefits from the opposite and get to a maintainable level. Give me just a second. I'm sorry. Anyway, And so, please, one, don't ever think I'm taking a shot at anybody who is dealing with this, because I deal with this. But it's it needs to be dealt with, and I believe in showing off my scars, the ones that are visual, and hoping that you will learn from them too. Because hypervigilance, if harnessed, and it can be, will keep you alive. Hypervigilance is very good for survival in dangerous areas for long periods. But it comes at the cost of a lot of living. Hypervigilance means not being able to enjoy a lot of things. It means not ever letting your guard down. So it is exhausting. It saps the joy, because you have discovered the real statistical truth that there are threats, and there are always threats. But until you come to not peace, coming to peace with it isn't quite the right term. But a lot of it is the difference between serenity and happiness. So maybe peace is the right term. When you accept that, yes, for people who have endured hideous traumas, that is always a possibility. It's why when certain people raise their voices, I will always flinch. There are certain accents that have been known to trigger me. And I need that, not in the lightweight, the word trigger has been thrown around, but to cause sudden emotional and nerve-driven reactions without conscious effort. I work on it. I have worked on it for years to be in a position where I can talk about this sort of thing, where I can go places that have people. And I mean any people. I still don't like it. And I'm seeing, I hate crowds. Crowd events can be not so fun because they're not. But I'm okay with these because he makes you feel safe, and that's part of his job. And part of his job is maintaining. God, my nose itches. Is to maintain the tactical capability of being aware so that you can be relaxed. Okay. Just need to make sure that there are some important things, and peopling is hard. And yeah. I have recently gone through, in the last few years, and I'm still adjusting, going from very capable to physically not being capable. And that is traumatic for people who've endured it. And see, you're okay with crowds unless they get really close. Like, I can't do the metal trip. I'd end up squashed. Now, see, for me, I'm never going to be okay with crowds because I was caught in the middle of a riot at one point. And a few other things happened. And due to the nature of the riot, I was the only target in sight. And it is very fortunate that I survived. And I learned the things they don't want to tell you about survival. Like, you got to be willing sometimes to jump into a full dumpster and pull the garbage over your head and not move. You have to be able to face rules and possible legal issue to survive because you are fleeing an area. It can be very grim. But if that's the only way you can survive, it's the only way you can survive. And when there were times, especially in the last few years, when I developed my neuropathy and things, and I couldn't even hold an object, I could to tell my body to move and it wouldn't. This was very traumatic. So it becomes a matter of learning to deal with it and building back up. So on both sides of the spectrum, I have to teach, but it means sometimes I'll have a student see me working with somebody else and freak out. Please don't ever do that with me. Of course not. That is for someone on the opposite side of the spectrum of where you are. You don't need that. So I won't do it. But they need that. There are some people who somebody with a military background, martial arts background, who's coming to have. There are people who I was literally nothing but a fairly intelligent punch dummy. Somebody who could hold a sword while they worked on what they were working. Toward the end, Al Hood was that way. I mean, he was going in to get certified to make a run at the Olympics. Hey, yes, exactly. And for you, my purpose wasn't to teach you. My purpose was to, I talk about you a lot. I'm very proud of you, Al. But yes, incredible formidable line fencer. I even then did not have the reflexes with the foil to keep up with him. See, I have no delusions of my long-term superiority, guys. I am very much a fencing elementary teacher. I teach people the basics. I get them built up so that they can find how they want to fight, find your fight, and then use that to find where they can elevate next, whether it's self-study with manuals or joining specific organizations or specific trainers. But then the door's always open for them to come back and share what they know and, go back over the basics. But there are certain people I consider tremendous success stories. People I consider it a privilege and an honor to have been able to help educate on that. And Rex Hood is one of them. Finding what you do and what works for you, what resonates, is it's a part of the journey that, again, also isn't talked about. Because most people, most styles, and most teachers come at it from the perspective of mass production. They really do. We're going to make lots of, I'm just going to grab a random Hadoken. Okay, Hadoken, So I know I'm not offending anybody. This is an homage to the DBZ people. Don't come at me. But let's say they're starting the Hadoken school of martial arts. They're going to teach everybody the same stance, the same move, the same, And they're going to do it with the same category, the same setup to everybody. Everybody learns it the same. How good they do with it is on them. But they get the same curriculum. And that is once I've established the health and functionality, there is a part of what I do where it works like that. Teach the basic guards. I teach the basic movements, and they are basic movements. But then, as soon as you have the basics down enough that you're safe, I try to put you on the journey towards, okay, we now can't have an alphabet. We have a Rosetta Stone. We can communicate physically because each bout is a conversation. It really is. From there, I need to know, are you speaking? Are you singing? Are you the kind of person who speaks loudly and presently? Are you the person who's soft-spoken and well-decided? From there, we can establish what you need, not to be the best fighter like me, but to be the best fighter for you. And then we can go, okay, you like this. I know this style, this style, and this style are places you can look. I know, okay, this weapon and this weapon or this defensive object will work well. You know, it's a mix of build and attitude. And I do, for the folks who haven't read this, I get into a lot of this when I'm talking about what kind of people you face. Because you need to understand what kind of person you are. I'm a defensive fighter. Real easy. Most of the time. Once in a while I can do some funny things. Most of the time I'm a defensive fighter. I can feign being an aggressive fighter long enough to teach people to fight against an aggressive fighter. I can feign between 60 and 80% of any style. Yes, exactly. Well, absolutely. The only way you score is via offense, and there's absolute truth to that, depending on what game you're playing. And that's why something like foil is so good for getting defensive people out of their shell, because that's the only way to score. It's also why you have to have scenarios so that you keep your mind flexible to responses outside that field. And that's why we do what we do the way we do it. But most of the time, I will take a student, who's come into the guild and find how they fight, do what they do, and hopefully between 6 months and a year, I found where they need to chase. I found a manual that will suit them, that they can dig into and really develop their fighting style, or a group, or both. And very often, that makes what I do almost intentionally obsolete. I want you guys to outgrow a lot of what I do, because a lot of what I do and a lot of what I teach is adaptive. And the adaptive training that I have that I've developed over 20 years of doing this is a set of skills that a part of me would, in a perfect world, none of what I teach would be necessary. And in a better world, not perfect, but just better than current, the adaptive parts no one would need. But sometimes people do. And those are the people who often stick around. There are some exceptions to it. There are some people who've been in my orbit who don't, I don't want to say don't belong, but don't need to be. They could have and have outgrown me. But they stick around for the enjoyment and friendship and camaraderie. And because they picked up, I think, the desire to pass on what they know to others. And they're really trying, those are the folks who tend to really pursue the path of being a sword master, the path of being a weapons master, the path of, I am here to instruct. And that's what the SCA locally never got about me. I was never about my own awards. I was never about prestige. all I wanted to do was to be left alone to help the people that others didn't want to help. And from there, help them move on. Get them trained up so that they would be desirable, so that they could find instructors whose fighting style, was parallel with their own, or personality was parallel with their own, who could give them more of what they particularly wanted. That's the heart of my art. The heart of my fight is not the conflict between me and my opponents. It's empowering you in your conflict against whatever is holding you back. Be it trauma, be it a physical disorder, be it, just a timidity of character. That's where the conflict that I'm interested in is. It's about building people up so that they can go to the next level. And it's not my definition of the next level. This isn't a linear path. This is towards their definition of the next level. That's why I don't teach people to fight. I teach them how to find their fight. And I know that's different. So if ever we're discussing something and it doesn't mesh with your attitude, please comment on it, discuss it. But also understand that due to the variety of student types that I have and the variety in my audience, the different people need very different things from me. And the reality is that chunk of a lesson presented that way might simply not be for you, because that's not what you need. Because if I were to take an experienced martial artist and try to do the hand over hand, soft, gentle speech that I do with someone who is so timid that they are shaking, but they want to learn, they would be mortified by that offense. By that approach. If I were to take when I'm dealing with somebody with the right kind of ego and they need a challenge, they need somebody who's willing to headbutt with them a bit to get them motivated, to fire them up. They need, let's do this. Come on. You think you ready to do this? Are we ready? Come on, let's go. That would terrify some of the more meek students I've had. But because at the same practice, in the same book, in the same videos, I am addressing a vast spectrum of people, I have different responses for them so that their learning is more tailored to their needs. I hope that's been interesting for you guys. I hope that's educational for you guys. I'm sorry, I did not get into, I remembered about halfway through that my plan for tonight's episode was actually going into more group movements, discussing things like pulse charges and such. But maybe we can get into that next week unless something more interesting comes up or there's a major hardware situation. I'll remind you all again, April 13th, Saturday, April 13th, I will be at RegionCon in Cherville, Indiana, and that from 10 till 10, open to the public. It is free to attend and $10 to participate in the games, unless you visit me at my booth, because I don't charge to demo BSR. People need a free place that they can come and game if they can't afford $10, and and be able to do so without judgment. So I will keep doing that until people try to stop me, and then I just won't attend the events because that's how I roll. It's shocking the consistency of my approach, set for horse. But and Cindy's talking. Foxy says makes sense to me. Good. Promoting my channel where you can get my books, including my new horror novel, Haints and Hellfire, and a few others, as well as Thesis's channel and this channel. Guys, with that, I've got an hour 15. I need to eat something. This has been a very passionate episode. I hope it was educational for you. I hope it was enjoyable for you. So, thanks to everybody who came out. Please like this video. Please share it. And please be sure to subscribe. And I will be back on this channel. Well, I'll be back on my other channel Monday at 10 a.m. for Nevermind the Furthermore, my writing and artist support group. And I'll be back here next Friday night at 8 p.m. my time for another episode of the Historical Fencing Guild live stream. Thank you, sir. It is a privilege to keep doing what I do. Sweet and sour. And yes, sir, April 13th. Food was meh, but edible. Well, I'm sorry your food was meh. Maybe it'll be better next time. But with that, guys, keep your eyes open, do your drills, be kind to yourself and each other, and as always, thank you for supporting your local swordmaster. I love you guys, and you should too. Toodles.